It began on an ordinary Thursday evening, the kind of quiet night that usually fades into memory without consequence. The kids were asleep, the dishes stacked in the sink, and the faint hum of the dishwasher filled the silence between us. Daniel sat across from me at the kitchen table, his expression unreadable as he stirred his coffee long after the sugar had dissolved. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady but strange. "Sarah," he said, eyes fixed on the swirling cup, "what would you think about couple swapping?" For a moment the world seemed to still. I blinked, half expecting him to smirk, to let out the laugh that usually followed his dry humor. But the laugh never came. His face remained calm, his tone deliberate, almost rehearsed. "Excuse me?" I managed, my voice thinner than I intended. "I'm just asking," he said lightly, as if he'd suggested a new restaurant rather than a test of our marriage. My heart raced, my breath quick and uneven. I searched for something rational to say, but my mind filled with static. The word swapping hung between us like a challenge, like an invitation I didn't ask for. Daniel had always been steady, practical, thoughtful, never impulsive. He was the man who triple-checked the locks before bed, who ironed his shirts with care, who kissed my forehead each morning before work. And yet, here he was, asking me to imagine something that shattered the quiet rhythm of our lives. "What brought this up?" I asked finally, keeping my tone even, though my hands trembled under the table. He hesitated, then said, "I've just been reading things about how some couples reconnect through it. It's not about cheating, it's about honesty. The word struck me as ironic, because at that moment, I realized there were things he'd been feeling, thinking, that he hadn't shared. Things that had been living beneath the surface of our calm, polite life. I wanted to believe this was a misunderstanding, a passing curiosity he'd soon regret mentioning. But there was something in his eyes, a restless ache, a loneliness I hadn't noticed before. That scared me more than the question itself. I pushed back from the table, the chair scraping the floor, breaking the fragile silence. "I think I need a minute," I whispered, unable to meet his gaze. As I walked toward the bedroom, my thoughts blurred into one overwhelming realization. This wasn't about desire or fantasy. It was about something missing, something he couldn't name, and I hadn't seen. And though I didn't know it yet, that single question would unravel everything I thought I understood about love, loyalty, and the quiet distance that had been growing between us all along. Daniel and I had always been the kind of couple people envied. At least that's what they told us. We looked stable, predictable in a way that seemed comforting from the outside. We went to dinner parties, exchanged polite smiles, and spoke in easy tones that suggested everything was fine. But beneath that practiced calm, something quieter and far more dangerous had been forming. Distance. It didn't happen overnight. It crept in gradually, like fog filling a room, soft, invisible, and suffocating all the same. There were no fights, no grand betrayals, just the slow fading of curiosity, of conversation, of laughter that once came effortlessly. Daniel worked long hours, and I buried myself in routine, school runs, grocery lists, phone calls to my mother that lasted longer than our nightly talks. Somewhere between responsibility and repetition, we stopped looking at each other like lovers and started behaving like co-managers of a shared life. I'd noticed it, of course. The way his eyes sometimes wandered past me at social gatherings, the distracted tone in his voice when I spoke. But I told myself it was normal, that marriage was supposed to settle into something quieter after a decade. I didn't see the stillness for what it was, a warning. After his shocking question that night, I couldn't stop replaying the past in my mind, scanning every memory for signs I had missed. Had he been unhappy all along? Was this his way of asking for help or for freedom? The next morning, as sunlight spilled through the kitchen window, Daniel acted as if nothing had happened. He poured coffee, hummed softly, and kissed me on the cheek before leaving for work. His composure unnerved me. It was as though he had dropped a grenade and walked away before it exploded. Throughout the day, I found myself staring at my reflection in every mirror I passed, searching for the woman I used to be. The one who once made him laugh uncontrollably, who wore red lipstick just because it made him smile. I wondered when she had disappeared. That evening, when he came home, we exchanged polite words, avoiding the subject that hovered like smoke between us. I wanted to ask him what he really meant, to demand an explanation, but fear silenced me. I was terrified of the answer, so instead I pretended the conversation never happened, pretended we were fine, pretended I wasn't standing on the edge of something I didn't understand. But that night, lying beside him in the dark, I realized the truth I'd been avoiding. This wasn't just about the question he asked. It was about everything we had stopped asking each other a long time ago, and that, I suspected, was only the beginning. The days that followed felt oddly fragile, as though one wrong word might shatter what little calm remained. Daniel behaved as if nothing had happened, smiling, making breakfast, asking about my day. But beneath his politeness was a new kind of caution. It was the carefulness of someone aware that they'd crossed a line, but unsure how to step back. I matched his calm with my own, both of us pretending balance while standing on uneven ground. Yet every silence between us grew heavier, every glance sharper. I caught myself analyzing the smallest things, the way his phone lingered in his hand, the flicker of distraction when I spoke, the new cologne he started wearing. None of it proved anything, but together it painted a picture I didn't want to see. One evening, as he scrolled through his tablet, I finally spoke. "Are you still thinking about what you said the other night?" He hesitated. "I was just curious, Sarah. People talk about it, exploring new things. It doesn't have to mean anything." "It means something to me," I said softly. "Because if you're looking for new things, it must mean what we have isn't enough." He sighed, pressing his palms together. "That's not fair. I love you. But don't you ever feel like we've lost something? That spark? That excitement?" His honesty stung because I had felt it too, though I'd buried it under chores and small talk. Still, hearing him say it aloud made it sound like a verdict. I wanted to reach for him, to remind him of the nights we'd stayed up dreaming about the future, of how safe I felt in his arms. But I didn't. Instead, I stared at the floor, feeling an ache I couldn't name. In the following days, I noticed him spending more time with our friends, Mark and Lisa, the same couple who had once joked about open marriages over wine. He seemed livelier around them, his laughter easier, his eyes brighter. It hurt, watching him rediscover something in their company that he no longer found with me. One night, after they left our house, I confronted him. "Is this about them?" I asked. "Because if it is, then just tell me." He looked startled, then guilty. "No, I want us to feel alive again." Alive. The word echoed painfully. Wasn't love supposed to be the thing that kept us alive? That night, I lay awake listening to his breathing beside me, steady, calm, familiar. And yet, I had never felt more like a stranger in my own marriage. I didn't know how to fix us, but I knew one thing. Pretending we were fine was no longer an option. Something had to change, and soon it would. It happened on a rainy Sunday evening, the kind of night that makes you feel trapped inside your own thoughts. Daniel sat by the window, the dim light casting long shadows across his face. I had spent the day pretending everything was normal, but the weight of our unspoken tension hung between us like static. When I finally broke the silence, my voice was calm, though my heart was not. "Daniel, are you talking to someone?" He looked up, startled, his eyes flickering with something I couldn't read. Fear, maybe guilt. "What?" "No, of course not." But the pause before his answer was too long. "Then why does it feel like you're somewhere else lately?" I pressed. "You're here, but you're not here." He rubbed his temples, exhaling slowly. "Sarah, please don't turn this into something it's not. I'm just trying to find balance. We've both been unhappy." "Unhappy?" The word hit harder than I expected. "You never said you were unhappy. Would it have mattered?" He shot back, his tone sharper than usual. "You've been distant too. You think I don't notice how you avoid me? How you shut down every time I try to talk?" His words stung because they weren't entirely untrue. There had been a slow withdrawal on both sides, an erosion that neither of us had dared to acknowledge. But hearing him say it out loud felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, realizing there's no solid ground beneath your feet. I crossed my arms, trying to steady myself. So your solution is, what? To bring someone else into our marriage? He looked away, his voice quieter now. I thought maybe it would help us reconnect, see each other differently again. The simplicity of his answer terrified me. Not because of what he said, but because I could see how deeply he believed it. For a moment, I didn't speak. I just watched the rain streak down the window, the rhythmic sound filling the room where love had once lived so easily. Finally, I said, if you think we need other people to feel alive, then maybe we've already lost what mattered. He didn't reply. The silence that followed said everything words couldn't. Later that night, as he slept beside me, I lay awake staring into the dark, wondering when love had turned into something we needed to justify. Somewhere along the line, the man who once promised me forever had started looking for escape routes, and the woman who once believed in him now questioned her own reflection. The truth was no longer hidden. It was sitting right there between us, quiet, undeniable, and waiting to break us apart. And deep down, I knew that the next conversation would decide everything. The next morning, the house felt impossibly quiet. Even the sound of the coffee machine seemed louder than usual. Daniel sat at the table, hands wrapped around his mug, his eyes heavy with sleeplessness. For a moment, I thought about not saying anything, about letting the silence protect us from another argument. But we had run out of space for pretending. Daniel, I began softly, I can't keep living like this. Whatever we've become, it's not love anymore. It's avoidance. He looked up, guilt shadowing his features. I didn't mean to hurt you, Sarah. I felt lost, like we were fading, and I didn't know how to reach you. Something inside me broke then. Not from anger, but from the quiet truth in his voice. We had both been drifting, each waiting for the other to notice. His question about couple swapping hadn't been a betrayal of desire. It had been a desperate attempt to feel seen. Still, the wound it left was real. I took a breath. Maybe what we need isn't something new. Maybe we just need to remember why we started. He nodded slowly, his voice low. Do you think we still can? I don't know, I admitted. But I'm willing to try if you are. For the first time in months, his expression softened. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine. It wasn't forgiveness. It was acknowledgement, fragile and uncertain, but real. Over the weeks that followed, we began to talk. Really talk. Not about work or the kids or schedules, but about us. About the fears we'd ignored, the small disappointments that had quietly chipped away at our closeness. It wasn't easy. Some nights ended in tears, others in silence. But slowly, something began to shift. Therapy helped us uncover what we had buried. Our shared loneliness, our unspoken expectations, the parts of ourselves we had lost trying to be everything for everyone else. We learned that love isn't sustained by passion alone, but by presence, the willingness to stay even when it's uncomfortable. We never revisited the idea of couple swapping. The very thought of it became a reminder of how close we'd come to losing everything. Yet in a strange way, that conversation became the mirror we needed, the one that forced us to see how far we'd drifted. Months later, on another quiet evening, Daniel looked at me across the table and said, "You know, I almost lost you." I smiled faintly. Maybe we both lost each other for a while, but we found something else along the way. Truth. He reached for my hand again, and this time, I didn't pull away. Love, I realized, doesn't survive by avoiding the cracks. It survives by facing them, together. And though our story isn't perfect, it's still ours. Imperfect, honest, and finally, alive again.